Hello, my name is Tatiana Hines. I am a little sick, so sorry if I do sound a little flustered or if I do cough during the video. So the party I'm going to be talking about today are going to be Democrats. I myself am a Democrat, and I do address myself as a Democrat. So who are Democrats? Democrats basically started in the early 1820s. Although the very first president, he did not want any parties involved. So having the parties kind of shifted and made people stand on two different sides, which he didn't want, which is how it is today. So there are two major parties today in America. There are Democrats and there are Republicans. The first party was known as the Democrat Republicans. So there have been a total of 15 Democratic presidents today. And Democrats just basically support social equality. They're also big supporters on LGBTQ, women's rights, environmental importance, freedom of religion, and they understand the need and the wants for cultural indifferences. So the evolution of the Democratic Party, the Civil War was kind of the beginning of when parties started to shift and switch sides. So there were Southern or Northern Democrats. It divided during the war, of course. As we know, the South wanted slaves, the North did not. So the North did support Abraham Lincoln, while the South did not support the abolishment of slavery, as it was a big source of their income. So after the war between 1868 and 1928, Republicans had a really big advantage on Democrats, mostly because Democrats is a group made for minorities. So the North was leaning towards Republicanism, while the South stick to Democrats. So Franklin D. Roosevelt, he was a huge influencer on actually having the parties switch sides. So he made the New Deal, which happened after the Great Depression. So basically after the Great Depression in the 1940s, it was to help assist low-income families. With that came with people of color, of course. So it was not just a program for people of color, but it definitely did address them more, and it was more of a priority. So social welfare, he made food stamps, social security, and all that stuff. So the group Dixiecrats, they started voting the Democratic way after the Great Depressions. So Dixiecrats were white people who lived in the South, but they weren't Republicans because they officially hadn't switched sides yet. So the whites weren't really along for the race agenda because it had nothing to do with them. So they were very active in the South. So after the Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s, Dixiecrats officially became frustrated, decided to make their own groups. As it was successful for a while, it eventually died down, and they did just become Republicans. So now people who were once Dixiecrats are most likely just Republicans who are in the South, and that's what we know as a Republican South. So some types of governing that go into the belief or the governing of Democrats are socialism and liberalism. So socialism is just the type of governing that believes that as a community as a whole, everyone should come together and goods should be distributed evenly. So everyone is basically a part of a puzzle. And some people may have bigger pieces, some may have more, but it's the same type of effort, just like in a different job area. Also, this type of governing would eliminate the suppression of minorities because lots of big corporate companies and big corporate celebrities and directors and movies and actresses are all making their money off of the money of poor people, and having socialism would basically just eliminate all types of class. And class is just really something hard to get out of, especially when you're born into a lower income family. Your social class kind of just stays that way, and if it doesn't, it's really 10 times harder to just get out of it. So people who believe in socialism just reject the idea of capitalism because it's just they are exploiting on the richness by the poor. So the second type of governing we're going to talk about is liberalism. So like I said earlier, Franklin D. Roosevelt did do the New Deal. So the New Deal movement just basically pushed for better healthcare, better homes, good job benefits for the poor. They opposed a social hierarchy, and they understood that a social hierarchy and racial injustice needed to be addressed extremely, and that at that point in time, it was just Black people were just trying to make a platform for themselves, because it was just when slavery had gotten abolished, you know, they were able to finally go to the same school, they were able to vote, so it was kind of just trying to get a ground layer started. So my personal view on the American dream is very much 100% the view of a Democrat. So one reason why I am not a believer in being Republican is because one of their core values is just always sticking to the same and, you know, keeping things how they were. And I do not believe in that, because laws change, people change, the world is constantly evolving, and Democrats understand that things need to be evolved. Being a Democrat, it's very important, you know, to evolve and keep updated and keep moving things forward, especially for people of color, because it's not the same as it was anymore. You know, people of color are way more involved now. They just think that everyone should be equal, and it is proven that the government inherently disadvantages people of color. I myself am half Mexican and half African American, so I am a part of 2 minority groups. So people of color have to work 10 times harder, and the government was solely made for white people. So whenever the Constitution was made for states and at the federal level, Black people were never a part of any type of governing. We weren't even considered people at that time. We were considered like a partial amount of a vote, and that was just to help the southern states get their votes up. So definitely with Democrats, one of their main goals is like, we are not how we used to be, and we need to constantly keep updating laws because we're not the same and we don't have the same advantage as white people. Another thing that separates me from Republicans and going my way with Democrats is just the whole LGBTQ community. Every Republican that I have ever met have always rejected LGBT community members. And as a Democrat, I'm not here to judge. Coming from a religious aspect, I'm not God, and that's not my place to judge. My place is to work harder every day to be like him, to love my neighbor, and to show people the way to God. But also, I'm not here to bash anyone, to make anyone feel bad for how they feel. And Democrats have always just, you know, put it out there that we do stand with people of color. We do stand with people who are a part of DACA. I did come from a community that was on the poor side of community, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and most of my friends were DACA recipients. And I just think that it is so crazy that they can say they don't want people to come into our country illegally when we're here on stolen land. Thank you. My name is Tatiana Hines.